What is going on, people? LP2000, I'm back at you with another video. Yes, welcome back to the Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews on behalf of Summit Kaiju. And today we're doing another X Plus figure review. And this one is a very monumental one. It's a very historic one in my opinion. This is one that I've been hoping for, wishing for, requesting, anticipating, whatever you want to call it, for so many years, at me being an X Plus collector. And today he's finally here. Today we're taking a look at the X Plus 25 centimeter Toho Frankenstein standard edition from the cool classic kaiju film from 1965, Frankenstein Conquers the World, or as it known in the Japanese version, Frankenstein versus Baragon. As you can see, I have the beautiful figure of Frankenstein here. Yes, he is amazing. Yes, he is. Very simplistic, but the story behind his arrival and him finally being released on the X Plus figure roster is really good. And it's a really complicated story. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, I think the backstory involved in this figure may be more interesting than the figure itself. But you know, we do things around here. Let's get up close and personal with the box before we get into the figure. And this is pretty much it with the box. You know what I mean? Simple Toho Large Monster Series box, but it's very simplistic for the simplistic design of Frankenstein. You've seen these boxes before, like with Jet Jaguar. You know, that's probably the only one I can think of that's been in this box. You know, but like I said, since he's more of a humanoid form, he doesn't have like a Godzilla-like structure or a Gigan structure with back fins, dorsal plates, and tails. He's just a regular human being type of humanoid type of figure, which really was great when it came to the shipping of this box. You know what I mean? Or the shipping of this figure, period, because this figure cost around, I say, like $112, $115 shipped from Hobby Search. He just got released just last week at the time of this recording. It is July the 8th, 2018, and he just got released, and I couldn't be even happier. So let's go into the backstory with this figure, because like I mentioned earlier, I think the backstory is a little bit more interesting than the figure itself. Don't get me wrong, this is a great figure, but the backstory that brought his arrival to us is really an interesting one. And for years and years as a collector, there have not been that many Toho Frankenstein figures out there. There have been some out there, you know what I mean? I think M1 made one, or some company made one. I don't remember who exactly made one. I do recall seeing like a Marmot type version of this version of Frankenstein. But for us, like a realistic version like this, there's not been any kind of figures of him out there, except for maybe model kits like, for example, recently Deimos just made a figure, or at least a model kit of this version of Frankenstein with him holding a tank. But the reason behind why there's not been that many figures of him, from what I've gathered, and of course I've read online, I've heard from other collectors, I kind of like put bits and pieces together of the story. For what I understand, the actor who played Frankenstein, I think his name is Koji Furuhata. I'm just going to try and give an abridged version because it's so much to the story. I'm just going by what I've read and what I've heard, you know. After he played this role, something happened in his life or whatever, but he decided to live a life of solitude. And basically he didn't want anything to do with the outside world, as well as give his likeness away to have figures made of him. Because I guess in Japan, and according to the great Steve Serajoli, who mentioned this on the most recent Fresh Vinyl Live show, great artist, painter, you know, modeler, we know him, we love him, from Vegas, Steve Serajoli. He gave a detailed explanation or story behind this, and basically kind of like backed up what I've heard and what I've read online, that basically the actor, excuse me, didn't want anything to do with the outside world and didn't want his likeness used to make figures, and that's how it needed to be done. For figures to be made of Frankenstein, his likeness needed to be approved by him, right? And he had no interest in doing something like that. Fast forward, I believe he passed away recently, and I think that the rights that he had reverted to his family. So a couple companies went to him, went to the family, and they gave their approval. And the first company that I saw that made a realistic version of this Frankenstein was Bandai, and it came out earlier this year. And when I saw that, I was like, you know, that gave me optimism that maybe, somehow, some way, in addition to the Deimos kit, somehow, some way, X Plus can probably get their hands on one, you know, because the Bandai version is really, really cool, you know. That's one thing I would say about the Bandai version in comparison to this one. When I get up close and personal with this figure, I tell you then, but I love the Bandai, you know, but at the same time, I wanted an X Plus version, you know. I wanted a more realistic X Plus version. So after I saw that, I was like, okay, we have hope. We have we have that little glimmer of hope that maybe we can get one from X Plus. So fast forward early this year, like around January, or I think February 1 to 2, the great Calliant from the great, awesome podcast, probably the best podcast that devoted to Godzilla and all his rubber suited foes. Once again, I love saying that. Love saying that. The great Kaiju from Kaiju Cast, he did an interview with the great G. Okamoto from X Plus. You know, you know who G. Okamoto is. We know him. We love him. You know what I mean? And during the video, he was asking questions about what can we expect from X Plus in the future, you know? And one of the first questions that he asked, if not the first question that he asked, was pertaining to Frankenstein. And what he said was really, really telling, at least to me. Now, mind you, in the video, Mr. G. Okamoto's English isn't that great. You know, it's okay, but it's not the best in the world. But what he said really got me even more hopeful, because he was asked about Frankenstein, and the only thing he said was soon. That's all he really says, like soon. I believe they were working on it. So that right there led me to believe that, okay, that means they got approval to make it, or the obstacles that folks were facing trying to make this figure were basically knocked down at that point. So I was looking forward to it. I was like, okay, see, that's more hope, more hope. Then I think a week later, 2 weeks later, Wonderfest came in, and they had this version of Frankenstein on display, and that was all the confirmation that we needed, and so many people were happy, including myself. Because I know a lot of folks don't really like this movie, or don't like this version of Frankenstein. I know a lot of Frankenstein purists that love the Boris Karloff ones and the older ones from Universal, whatever. They don't really like this version of Frankenstein. The same reason a lot of King Kong purists that love the 33 version, the 2005 version, don't really care for the Toho ones, you know, from 62 and 67. But to me, once again, I make no bones about it. King Kong Escapes from Toho is like my favorite version of King Kong. And as far as Frankenstein, this is my favorite version of Frankenstein. And that's what happened. Those are the facts of what happened on why X Plus was able to get this figure to us. You know, like I said, the story is, you know, kind of enriched with details about the actor and didn't want his likeness used or whatever. But I'm glad all that is behind us now, and we finally got a great figure of Frankenstein. I have the standard. You know, the Rick Boy came with this version of Frankenstein, but it came with alternate arms, and it came like with a little mini figure of the actor that he was holding in the film, Dr. Kawaji. You know, after in this, you know, in the scene in the film, after he witnesses Frankenstein and Baragon fighting for the first time, Frankenstein saves him, and he's holding him like this. You know. Also, it comes with a mini crawling version of the 1965 Baragon that came out in 2011. So that was the Rip Boy set, or the Rip Boy option of this Frankenstein figure. And I have to say, that was a really, really good look. That was a really good option on X Plus's part to include that. Because I know the four-legged Baragon has been something that a lot of folks have been wishing for. In addition to Frankenstein himself, as a matter of fact, I seen a couple of collectors that wasn't even interested in the Frankenstein. They wanted Baragon, you know, or vice versa. There are a lot of folks that was loving the fact that Frankenstein was coming, but wasn't really interested in the Baragon. In my opinion, if you're gonna get something like that, you might as well just hold on to both, because in a few months from now, I probably won't even give it a few months from now. I would say like at least a month from now, when these things are scarce and they're not out there that much. You know, they're in the aftermarket, but you have to hunt them down. They're gonna be up there in price. So the standard was like I said, like $115 ship from Hobby Search or whatever. The Rip Boy set was like around maybe $330 or whatever. But trust me, I was saying like in like a month or 2 months from now, the standard is gonna be like what the Rip Boy prices are, you know, $330, and God knows what the Rip Boy price is gonna go for. You know what I mean? So those who pre-ordered, you know, I think we made the wise decision. You know, if you're on the fence about getting it, at the time of this recording, like I said, it's July the 8th. And he's still out there. I think there are a couple on Hobby Search, you know, whatever. I know there's a couple of vendors. If you're going to G-Fest this week, there are a couple of vendors that may have this set. So the time is now. If you want one, the time is now. Whether it's the standard or the Rip Boy Frankenstein, if you're on the fence about getting it, please get off that fence. Please get off it. Because like I said, it's really affordable now. And it's going to be even horrendously overpriced if you wait too long. So please make the decision. If you want this set or Frankenstein by himself, make that decision to get it right now. You will not be disappointed. And that's it with the backstory about this figure. You know, once again, Frankenstein Conquers the World, I believe, is one of my favorite movies, really. And I think it's a great alternative to the other Godzilla films that we have gotten in the past. You know, like I mentioned in my Gargantuous, my 25cm Gargantuous review, that it's nice to have other alternative figures, or alternative films, excuse me, other than Godzilla, Gamera, and Ultraman, because those are the three characters that comprises most of the films that the majority of us watch. You know, but you have other films out there, like I mentioned, with Atragon, Montongo, The Human Vapor, Gorath, The Mysterians, King Kong Escapes, War of the Gargantuas, The Last War, and of course Frankenstein Conquers the World. All these great alternative science fiction films that offer great entertainment, you know, great entertaining value, you know. Between the two, because this film, Frankenstein Conquers the World, is a prequel to War of the Gargantuas, and between the two, I kind of prefer War of the Gargantuas, but this film is great in its own right. But I'll talk about that when I'm talking about the film towards the tail end of the video. So, you know, we do things around here that gets up close and personal with the newest figure of the X Plus 25cm Toho Frankenstein from 1965's Frankenstein Conquers the World. All right? Let's get up close and personal. Okay, folks, here we are up close and personal with the Toho 25cm Frankenstein. And once again, like I mentioned, it's very simplistic, but they got it right. They really did get this right with this figure. Now, I mentioned earlier as far as the Bandai Frankenstein, and don't get me wrong, the S Plus is very more realistic, right? You know, the attention to detail with the hair all over his body, as well as the bear skin fur that he somehow made. Don't know how he did that, but of course this represents when Frankenstein looks towards the tail end of the film. He went through various looks in the film, you know, from being a little boy, a feral boy. Then he was in the lab. He had that lab outfit on. Then once he escaped, he had on that beige shirt and beige pants that he kind of outgrew as he got bigger, kind of like what the Hulk goes through. But this was the look he had towards the tail end of the film before he fought Baragon and while he fought Baragon, really. And the attention to detail is amazing. But as far as the Bandai is concerned, the one thing that I find superior of the Bandai in comparison to S Plus is the pose. Now, the Bandai has a more combative pose with his arms out like this. you know, like he's about to, you know, defend himself or attack Baragon. But with this one, he just, you know, very simplistic, you know, is I won't say it's a boring pose, but it's just, it's not a dynamic pose with his arms out or whatever. He just basically standing museum-like or statuesque. But I kind of wish that the Rip Boy option would have came with alternate arms, where it could have, like, you know, gave him, you know, alternate arms where you could have had him in a combative pose. Even though I enjoy the Rip Boy set, and I'm happy for everybody that has the Rip Boy, you know, especially with Baragon, you know, you gotta love the Baragon. But him holding the scientist, in my opinion, I think was kind of a weak feature. You know what I mean? I think had, especially, you know, that's the whole thing. You know, with Baragon being included in the set, you would have thought that they would have included alternate arms, where once you put them together, you would have had like a great recreation of the fight scene of the film. But instead, I guess the S Plus decided to go a more sentimental route with him holding the scientist. I guess to show that really Frankenstein wasn't really a threat to humans. You know, he wasn't really an evil creature. He wasn't really evil. You know, just more so misunderstood, which goes along the lines of the original Frankenstein, because he was a misunderstood creature, even though I think he was more malevolent. This Frankenstein, he's not malevolent. You know, he's not sinister. Like I said, he's not evil. He's just a misunderstood, just monster, you know. But the detail on this thing, or at least, well, here's the thing. Yeah, there you go. The detail on Frankenstein is so amazing. And it comes with this stand that you have to attach to him. Kind of like the Gigantic Series Ultraman and the Gigantic Series Ultra 7. And honestly, you don't, well, actually, it's kind of yes or no whether you need this tail stand. He can stand on his own, but for extra security, you know, it's best that you have the stand, you know. Now, unlike the Gargantuas, that's more so heavy and bulkier in their upper bodies, you know, Frankenstein here is a little bit more slimmer, you know. So when you do put him up by himself, let me just try it out right fast. Let me take him off, see how he does. Now, see, he can stand, but see, the thing about it is his feet kind of like don't stand firmly on the ground, so he kind of like leans back a little bit. And especially with it getting hot, the vinyl may like be contorted, or it may change, you know, with it being hot or whatever. So like I said, to provide extra security of the figure, it's best to have this this clamp stand to hold him in place. And he's locked into place, and he looks great. You know, everything about this Frankenstein is on point. You know, like I said, the hair all over his body, the bear skin outfit, you know, the highlights, the dry brushing on it, you know, especially on his back or whatever, the dry brushing of the highlights on the I guess it's tree, not tree, but like bear skin, you know, whatever. No doubt Frankenstein probably found a bear and then ate it and then skinned it so he could have an outfit here. But also in addition to that, like I said, the hair all over his body here, on his back, on his arms, on his legs, and especially his feet. You know, S Plus has done a great job, especially, I don't know what this is on his neck, you know, but it was in the film, you know, it was in the film. I don't know what it is, but he looks great. Also, on the top of his head, there's like some yellow highlights on top of his head. And also, one last thing about this figure. Like Sanda and Gara, the 25cm Gargantuas that I just got, this Frankenstein also can have his face open, where you can adjust the eyes. You see what I'm saying? And just put it back into place, which don't take much. And that's it. Now, with that being said, you know, like I mentioned earlier, or at least mentioned in my 25cm Gargantua review, I don't see myself messing around with the eyes, you know, because really they're so small, it's hardly even noticeable. But I think it's a nice feature to have if you do get the urge to want to, you know, turn his eyes or do something with his eyes or whatever. But it's a nice little feature. But I myself personally, I don't see myself messing around with that too much. But yeah, this is great. This is a great looking Frankenstein. Very realistic. And probably besides the Deimos kit, like I mentioned earlier, this is probably the most realistic looking Toho Frankenstein out there right now, in my opinion. You know, and I'm glad I was able to finally get it, you know, after waiting for so long, because this has been one of those monsters that us X Plus fans, at least these hardcore Showa fans like myself, David Abdopko, a couple other people, we've been asking for Frankenstein. We've been wanting Frankenstein for so many years. And the fact that it's finally here and finally has come to fruition is really, really awesome. You know, it's really, really awesome. Not much to say about it anymore than what I've already said, but it really speaks for itself. The detail on this thing is amazing. The sculpt is amazing. Like I mentioned, I might want to take something away, like a point off, if I had a point rating scale. The only thing I wish could have been added into this figure was the option of having alternate arms to put him in more a dynamic attack pose. But besides that, it's amazing. It's amazing. It is great. So once again, if you're on the fence about getting this figure or the Rick Boy set, get off that fence, because this really is nice. And he's not really a shelf hog, as you can see. With him being a very simplistic design, he's not going to take much on your shelf. And, you know, once you pair him with Baragon, yeah, great setup from the film. All right, so let's do two size comparisons, and we'll wrap this review up with my thoughts of Frankenstein Conquers the World. All right, let's go with the first size comparison. Okay, folks, this is the first size comparison, and alongside Frankenstein, I have his enemy, his arch enemy from the film right next to him. I have Baragon, and this is a Billiken standing Baragon kit that I got from a good friend of mine, Burley Vang. What's up, man? I hope you're watching. Love you. And just want to let you know, at least show you, if you do have this Baragon, he does scale well with this Frankenstein. You know, because this is how it was in the film somewhat. You know, Baragon was maybe a little bit taller, but he was still more bulky and more and thicker as a kaiju in comparison to Frankenstein here. But as you can see, they look great together. They really do look great together. I have a four-legged wave Baragon 1965 kit, but in comparison to him, he's kind of like too big. You know, they still look good together, but Baragon looks really, real too big in comparison to Frankenstein here. But this looks perfect to me. This looks so great. This looks so great to me, you know, and just make me want to watch a movie now. You know, this is great. This is really so great. I can't believe that he's finally here after months and months of waiting. You know, after we got the rumblings of the Bandai Frankenstein, after what the great G. Okamoto said in that interview, them showing a prototype version of Frankenstein at Wonderfest, and now after waiting for so many months, he is finally here, and I couldn't be happier. When I look back on 2018 at the end of the year, Frankenstein is really a highlight. This is really a highlight because, once again, I never thought as a collector we would ever see any version of Frankenstein from X Plus. But I'm glad that things turned out the way they did. Certain things happened, and this happened, which led to other things. And it's finally here. It's finally a reality. So, and I am a happy collector. Once again, I love Frankenstein Conquers the World. I love that film. And I'm glad I have a realistic version of Frankenstein in my collection. Alright, let's go with one more size comparison to wrap this review up. Alright, let's go with the last and second size comparison. Now, I think you're going to enjoy this one. This is a more interesting one. Alright, let's go with the next size comparison. Okay, folks, this is the last size comparison. Of course, I had to have all Toho versions of the Frankenstein character here at one time. And of course, Gyra, the original Frankenstein, as well as Sanda from Frankenstein Conquers the World, and from its sequel, or its loose sequel, The War of the Gargantuas, or better yet, Frankenstein's Monster, Sanda versus Gyra. And as you can see, they look really well together. Scaling wise, I think they do scale well together as figures, but like far as like movie accuracy purposes, Frankenstein is obviously too big because he was only 20 feet tall in Frankenstein Conquers the World, whereas Sanda and Gyra, I believe they were like maybe like 100 feet tall, something like that. Which is one of the cool things about these two films, you know. With them not being as big as, let's say, a Godzilla or a Rodan or a King Ghidorah or a Hedra or a Gigan, the miniature work and the visual effects, the special effects in the film were really, really good. Now, mind you, these monsters didn't like shoot any kind of like atomic rays or gravity beams. You know, Baragon did shoot out a ray, but he used it every seldom, you know, or every now and then. But it's not a whole abundance of like great optical effects like you would find like in Monster Zero. You know what I mean? So it's very, very simplistic. But the point is the miniature work, as well as like the the countryside and the mountainous backgrounds that you would see these monsters, you know, travel through, you know, with the trees and stuff. Mostly, if not all that, was really like just ferns, real life ferns and trees planted by hand. And the miniatures, like the buildings that would interact with the monsters, or the monsters would interact with the buildings. The buildings required a lot more detail. You know, that's one of the things I love about these two films, because with the monsters scaling down, the miniature work really shines, and it really shows the hard work that the Toho special effects people put into the backgrounds when it came to these monsters. You know, but before we get up out of here, I'm gonna try and attempt to connect Frankenstein Conquers the World to War of the Gargantuas. Like I said, Frankenstein Conquers the World is considered a prequel to War of the Gargantuas. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, and of course we can debate, we can agree, disagree. In my opinion, I think both films are just Toho's separate take on the King Kong, excuse me, not King Kong, two separate takes of the Frankenstein character. Kind of along the lines of, you know, King Kong versus Godzilla and King Kong Escapes. Those films have nothing to do with each other, even though they feature the same character of King Kong, but it's like two different versions of King Kong, at least size-wise. You know what I mean? Different backgrounds, different sizes or whatever. And I think this is just Toho's two separate takes of the Frankenstein character between Frankenstein Conquers the World and War of the Gargantuas. You know, like I said, it's a loose sequel. I think because they call it a sequel is because they feature similar characters. You know, that's why I call it a loose sequel. But if you want to connect the dots and try to connect Frankenstein Conquers the World to War of the Gargantuas, which means the original Frankenstein is either Gower or Sander. You know what I mean? And mind you, a case can be made to why Frankenstein can be either Sander or Gower, right? Now, let's just say he was Gower, okay? Now, there are a couple things in the film that Frankenstein does, and a couple things that he doesn't do that will make you believe that he's either one or the other one, because both Sander and Gower demonstrate traits that the original Frankenstein did in Frankenstein Conquers the World. Now, as far as Gower, now, one thing about Frankenstein, from Frankenstein Conquers the World, he was a carnivore. Let's face it. You know, he ate a lot of meat. He loved eating meat. You know, that's one thing about Frankenstein that I see in Gower. You know, excuse me, that's one thing about Gower that I see in relation to the original Frankenstein. That both Frankenstein and Gower are extremely, they love meat. You know what I mean? They love meat and flesh and all that other stuff, you know. And also there's a scene in Frankenstein Conquers the World where Frankenstein doesn't really attack a boat, but there's like a party yacht that's like on this lake, or I guess a bay or whatever. Frankenstein basically is in the water for a long period of time. Then he rises up. He kind of like pushes the boat a little bit. He doesn't really attack it, but in my opinion, I think he was very, very curious of the people aboard the boat. So he kind of like pushes it out the way or whatever. You know, that's pretty much it. After the boat basically just floats right by him, Frankenstein goes back into the water and submerges, and then we don't see him anymore. So how is Frankenstein, if he's a land creature, how is he supposed to survive underwater? Once again, that's something that I see Gower doing, because Sander couldn't really live underwater. So that's why I believe that, you know, Gower could be the original Frankenstein. And one last thing, if you saw the international dub or international cut of the film, you know, after Frankenstein defeats Baragon, he is attacked by a giant octopus. Giant octopus attacks Frankenstein and drags him into a nearby lake or river or whatever, and we don't see Frankenstein anymore. But what happens at the beginning of War of the Gargantuas? An octopus attacks a boat, and who attacks the octopus? Gower. So you can see, you know, if you want to connect the dots as far as like Gower being the original Frankenstein, you have those examples there. On the other hand, Sander, okay? Frankenstein could be the, Sander could be the original Frankenstein as well. And, of course, Sander is very friendly towards humans. Like I mentioned before, Frankenstein was never really a villain. You know, he was more so tolerant of humans. In a way, he kind of like stayed away from humans. But Sander was very peaceful, you know, kind of like the original Frankenstein. So after his attack or after he Frankenstein defeats Baragon and Frankenstein Conquers the World, and after the earthquake, you know, sucks him in, you can really argue that basically Frankenstein found a way to survive and go away and hide up in the mountains, which where they found Sanda in War of the Gargantuars. And as you can see, for like the sculpt of Frankenstein, he has hair basically covering most of his body, and it's like, I think more hair will be grown in as time goes on. And as you can look at Sanda, he has more hair on his body than scales, whereas Gower has more scales than hair on his body. So between those two elements, you know, you can basically make the argument that maybe Frankenstein is Sanda, which thereby, you know, Sanda will produce Gower and so on and so forth. So that's my theory. Those are my fan theories on how you can connect both films together if you really want to do that. Of course, we can agree to disagree, like I mentioned, but that's what I have come up with. Because in the film War of the Gargantuars, even though they make vague references to Frankenstein Conquers the World, to my knowledge and to what I've seen involving the films, there's nothing that anybody says or do that definitively ties Frankenstein Conquers the World to War of the Gargantuars. Like I mentioned, it's a loose sequel. If y'all have any information about that, maybe you can pipe down in the comment section. But for what I've seen, for what I've gathered, that's what it appears to me. You know, that this is just a loose sequel. One doesn't have anything to do with the other, except for the similar title of monsters or similar title of Frankensteins. But if you want to connect the two, you can try these two theories. You know what I mean? So that's pretty much it with the size comparisons. And yes, once again, they look great together, as well as Frankenstein compared with the Baragon from earlier. Or if you get the Baragon from the Rip Boy set, either way, you can't deny that all these monsters look good together. You know? So let's wrap this review up and let's talk about Frankenstein Conquers the World, or better yet, Frankenstein versus Baragon. All right, let's go. Okay, folks, I'm back, and let's talk about Frankenstein versus Baragon, or better yet, Frankenstein Conquers the World. And once again, let me just reiterate, I do love this film. I really do. It's a great alternative film. I get the urge to watch it, like I mentioned, when I get tired of watching Godzilla, you know, whatever, because sometimes you can get burned out by watching Godzilla. You know, I'm not too ashamed to admit that. You know, I'm a Godzilla fan through and through. Y'all know that. You know, I love the big G or whatever, but with me being a Kaiju fan, I don't want to see a Godzilla film every single time I want to see a Kaiju film. That's why you have other alternative films like this one, like War of the Gargantuars, like the Mysterians, like Matango, like Atragon, like The Last War, like King Kong Escapes. You know, you have all these other films, even Yongari, even Gappa, The X from Outer Space. You have all these other great alternative films to go to when you get, you know, Godzilla fatigue. And it can happen, you know. And besides War of the Gargantuars, this is like one of my go-to films. When I want to watch a good Kaiju film, besides War of the Gargantuars, an alternative film, I pop this film in. You know, now it doesn't feature a lot of sea destruction scenes, you know, because the fight between Baragon and Frankenstein occurs in a mountainous range near Mount Fuji. They don't tear down buildings like Gower and Sanda did in War of the Gargantuars. But the fight scene is really, really good involving these two monsters, you know. And honestly, I put this fight scene almost up there with the War of the Gargantuars fight, because Baragon and Frankenstein really tear into each other, you know. Now, as far as the characters of the film, they're really, really good. As a matter of fact, that's the one thing that I find superior to War of the Gargantuars. You know, I love War of the Gargantuars. You know, I love that film. But I mentioned my gripe with it is Russ Tamblyn, you know, and we don't have to go we don't have to go there. We already know about his bland, boring performance. But I have to say, Nick Adams and the rest of the characters in Frankenstein Conquers the World, they deliver passion. They deliver, like, you know, this energetic performance, like, you know, they really wanted to be there, you know. So the characters are really, really good. But the main character is really Frankenstein. You really get behind his character of him being really a misunderstood monster, you know, and just him just want to be away from humanity and all that good stuff, you know. It's just a great, great character story arc with Frankenstein, because you really feel for him, you know. And then when Baragon appears and starts attacking folks and attacking farmlands and horses and all that stuff, and then Baragon disappears, Frankenstein basically gets blamed for the stuff that Baragon does, and that's why he's even more hunted, you know. So which gives you more sympathy for Frankenstein as a character, you know, because like I said, he's a really misunderstood character. You know, all he wants to do is just be by himself and, you know, just have somewhat of some solitude, which is kind of ironic considering that the actor, you know, that story I told earlier, you know, that he wanted to be in solitude. Frankenstein is kind of like the same way. So I kind of find that very ironic between the character he played and then the real life actor. They wanted some solitude. They didn't want anything to do with the outside world, you know. But like I mentioned, Frankenstein and Baragon's fight is really, really, really awesome. And once again, the only other gripe I may have with this film is the fact that, you know, I love Baragon. Don't get me wrong. So don't hate me in the comment section. My thing with Baragon is that there's no real explanation as to why Baragon is there, you know. I tend to think that the reason why Baragon was in this film is because at this point, most of the other kaiju films around the time feature monster versus monster action, melees, brawls, or whatever. So I think Baragon's put in there with the expectation that Frankenstein needed something to fight, you know. So Baragon is not given a really huge backstory. He's just a ravenous, you know, flesh-eating monster that comes in, starts trouble, and that's it. He's not really given like a really, really great story or given really great character like Sanda and Gara is given great characters and great stories behind their characters in their film. So Baragon just kind of like comes out of nowhere, but also at the same time, this is probably like the best version of Baragon, or at least the best performance of Baragon. You know, with all due respect to Destroy All Monsters, and especially GMK, this is probably the best version and the best performance of Baragon. So if you want the best Baragon performance, you got it all in this film right here, you know. But once again, I love Frankenstein Conquers the World. Like I said, it's a great alternative. You know, I highly recommend this film. Either get the DVD or the Blu-ray, you know, whatever. Please go out your way and try to watch this film, you know, and take all what you heard about it being really cheesy and fat, you know, that the Japanese got their hands on the character and probably didn't do right when it came to the original character. Take that, just throw it out the window. Take it out the equation. Go in this film with an open mind. Go in this film like if you love like Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, the Water Gargantuan, Ghidorah Three-Headed Monster, and all the other monster melee, monster brawl films around this time, I think you would definitely love this film as an alternative. You know what I mean? So that pretty much concludes my review of the X Plus 25cm standard edition of the Toho Frankenstein from the classic 1965 film Frankenstein vs. Baragon, or better yet, Frankenstein Conquers the World. If you have any questions, holler me down in the comment section or hit me from Facebook via Leslie P. Chambers. We definitely will go from there. Yes! Woo! I'm glad he's here. I'm glad that we finally got this figure. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, I am. And this is the last video that I'm going to do before G-Fest. Like I mentioned earlier, it is July the 8th, 2018. G-Fest is less than like 6 days away. And I'm looking forward to it. So there will be no videos like reviews or anything like that until I get back from G-Fest. You know, once I'm there, like I said, I may do some videos and then upload them to the channel later on. This is the last review that y'all gonna get, you know, so just give me some time. More stuff is coming, you know, whatever I get from G-Fest. Like I said, I plan on getting the Megara and X Plus Megara that just came out. I'm gonna try and get that. I gotta get the Megazord. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. You're gonna get reviewed. Trust me, you're gonna get reviewed. As well as I still got to do the X Plus 25cm Mothra 1961, as well as the 30cm Mothra Larva 1961. I got to do 25cm and 30cm Varan from Varan the Unbelievable. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's coming. In addition to the other stuff I have coming this month, you know, the Favorite Sculptors line, Godzilla 1962, the Space Godzilla Ripboard set with Little Godzilla, as well as next month, 30cm Jet Jaguar and 30cm Shin Godzilla Sakai. Yeah, a lot of stuff is coming, so please stay tuned. And for those who are going to G-Fest, I hope to see you out there. If you see me or whatever, come and holler at me, have a conversation. You know, it's all about having fun. You know, that's the purpose of G-Fest is to have fun, as well as this hobby. That's the purpose of this, is to have fun, to have a good time. All right, and please get this figure. Get this figure. You will not be disappointed with the Ripboard edition or the standard edition of the 25cm Toho Frankenstein from Frankenstein Conquers the World. Alright? So I thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see y'all again on this figure and move review. Alright? Y'all take it easy.